Welcome. NOAA just released its June of 2020 Global Climate Report, and this video is a summary of that report. June 2020 was the third warmest June on record. That includes globally, on land, on the ocean, the Northern Hemisphere and the Southern Hemisphere, which is a remarkable amount of uniformity across the globe. Overall, it was about 0.04 degrees centigrade cooler than the same time last year. That makes it 426 consecutive months with temperatures above the 20th century average. So unless you're over 35 years of age, you've never experienced a month that has been cooler than the 20th century average. Year to date, that is from January through June, this was the second warmest period on record, second only to 2016. This goes to show that temperatures are still rising because 2016 was the middle of the strongest El Nino event we've seen for many years. And currently we're in an ENSO neutral condition, or actually tending towards a La Nina at the moment. And so this really shows that the temperatures of the globe is warming up quite rapidly. So let's take a look at the map and see how those temperatures were distributed. We can see there are particularly cold areas, the Canadian Maritimes and the west coast of Greenland, Western Russia, Northern China, India. But to more than compensate for that, there are large areas of much warmer than average. The central United States, most of South America, a large swathe of Africa, Western Europe. That hot spot in Siberia doesn't seem to have gone away as yet. China and Australia seem to be heating up. Lastly, but by no means least, there is this swathe of cold water off the coast of South America. This is indicating that the El Nino and ENSO neutral, this is indicating that we may be setting up for a La Nina fairly soon. So we have to keep an eye on that, more on that later. Now that last map doesn't tell you which areas are setting records, either hot or cold. This one does. This is called a percentiles map. If you're looking for record cold pixels, they appear in dark blue. Record warm pixels are dark red, and there's 106 of those. We only have 5 pixels here which are much cooler than average, where we have hundreds of pixels much warmer than average. Again, this indicates why this is the third warmest June on record. Here's my matrix showing the relative ranking of each month in terms of average temperature over the last 6 years. And I'd like to point out what a remarkable run of temperatures we've had over the last 13 months. From June of 2019 to this month, June of 2020, we've had no month outside the top 3. The last time that happened was back in the September of 2015 to September of 2016, which was the peak of the large El Nino event that dominated the temperature for over a year. Given that we're not in an El Nino, this is quite a remarkable run of temperatures that we've had recently. Now let's take a look at the upper atmosphere, and to do that we're going to be using the satellite data from the University of Alabama Huntsville and Remote Sensing Systems. Now they both use the same data, they just analyze it in a slightly different way. We'll first look at the lower troposphere, which has an average altitude of about 4 kilometers. UAH finds it to be the third warmest June on record, and RSS finds it to be the second warmest June on record, and their average warming rate is 0.15 degrees centigrade per decade, which is remarkably similar to the ground-based temperatures. Next we go to the mid-troposphere. This is an altitude of about 7 kilometers. Both find it to be the third warmest June on record, and they get very similar values for the slope here at about 0.18 degrees centigrade per decade. Lastly, the stratosphere, they both found to be the second coolest on record, with a cooling rate of about 0.23 degrees centigrade per decade. But now the fact that the stratosphere is cooling is a unique signature of global warming caused by greenhouse gases. Next we take a look at the Northern Hemisphere sea ice extent, basically the Arctic. for June 2020. It was found to be the third lowest on record, making it 21 consecutive years that we've had below average sea ice in the Arctic. Next we will take a look at the Antarctic sea ice extent, and it turned out to be the 16th lowest on record, and that makes 5 years with below average sea ice in the Antarctic. NOAA keeps a continuous record of the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, and for 2020 it reached 416.39 parts per million. That's 2.46 parts per million more than the same time last year. So this is yet another record high. So what is going on with El Nino and La Nina? These are the models that are predicting the future course of that particular oscillation. And as you can see, currently, although we're in what's called ENSO-neutral conditions, i.e. neither an El Nino nor a La Nina, the trend is to much lower values, and so we're in a La Nina watch for the next few months. Now, on average, it doesn't look as though it's going to be a very deep one, but these models are notoriously fickle, and so we could end up with a deep El Nino, or it could remain ENSO-neutral for the next few months. We don't know. We'll see. However, we can expect temperatures to drop somewhat as a result of this. The hurricane season is underway, and we've already had 6 storms. That's the earliest on record that we'll reach that number. However, that's no guarantee that the rest of the season is going to be as busy. Fortunately, we've had no hurricanes as yet. But we do have the question of La Nina. La Nina tends to encourage stronger and more Atlantic hurricanes. So if we slip into an La Nina, perhaps we will have a very busy season. Tropical Storm Faye was the first tropical storm to make landfall in New Jersey in over a decade, and it has been soaking the Northeast ever since. So what can we conclude from all of this? The last 12 months are all in the top 3 warmest months on record, which is the longest run of something like that since the El Nino of 2015 and 2016. 2020 is still on pace to be the second warmest year on record. That would make 7 record warmest years in a row. ENSO-neutral conditions currently prevail, but a La Nina is quite possible by the autumn. So until next time, stay safe.